The man had only just finished one drink on the plane when he suddenly felt dizzy and lightheaded. He immediately realized that something was wrong. He tried to get up and leave his seat, but the person sitting next to him restrained him and threw him into the bathroom, muttering things like bonus money over and over again. It turned out that this plane was full of assassins, and they were all there for the same purpose, lurking and staring at the huge bounty. Who exactly was this man? Why was he caught up in this large-scale assassination plot? What earth-shattering secret was hidden behind it? The story goes back 12 hours earlier. That morning, CIA agent Hunter was whistling as he walked to work. Unexpectedly, in the next second, he suddenly received an emergency notification from a colleague. His expression immediately changed, and he rushed into the office building at top speed, heading straight for the basement level 30. It turned out that just 10 minutes earlier, the CIA had received shocking information. One of the facilities in Bangkok, Thailand, had been bombed and destroyed, clearly done on purpose. Then, his colleague Robin spoke up. They couldn't find any information related to the bombing. The perpetrator was like a ghost, leaving not a trace behind. Hearing this, Hunter immediately got angry because he knew exactly who the mastermind was. The hacker with the codename Ghost had caused the GDP of many countries to collapse and bankrupt dozens of Fortune 500 companies. This wasn't even the first time the opponent had provoked the CIA. But what made people furious was that no matter how much effort they spent searching, they couldn't get any information about the person's identity. Just as Hunter was racking his brains for a solution, Boss Katie suddenly appeared in front of him and asked what exactly had happened. Hunter immediately tried to cover up his negligence, but Katie saw through it. She sternly warned him not to take any chances because this matter concerned the safety of millions of people. Just then, Agent Simon discovered a suspicious figure on the surveillance screen, but the person's entire body was covered in interference signals, making it impossible to see their face or figure. Because the CIA in Bangkok didn't have any agents who could carry out this mission, Hunter suggested that the Singapore Special Forces team investigate. But Katie thought that the Singapore Special Forces team wouldn't be able to reach Bangkok for at least another hour, and by then, Ghost would have already left Thailand. Continuing the search would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. After careful consideration, Katie decided to urgently recall the fired former agent Lucas Reyes. At this time, in order to evade arrest, the opponent was struggling to hide in a slum in Bangkok. It turned out that 2 years ago, when Lucas was still an agent, he received orders to protect a very important diplomat, but unexpectedly, the opponent was a cruel sadist. Lucas, being righteous of course, couldn't sit still, so he directly beat the diplomat up, but unexpectedly, he accidentally beat the opponent into a vegetative state. What was worse was that the diplomat was the younger brother of the CIA director. As a result, Lucas was not only fired, but also unexpectedly got into legal trouble. Even Katie, his lover, chose to betray him. Helplessly, he could only live a life of hiding. So when he received a call from Katie, Lucas felt like it wasn't real. But before he could even open his mouth, the other party earnestly asked him not to hang up, and then recounted in detail the troubles the CIA was facing, hoping that he could help arrest the hacker Ghost. Hearing this, Lucas couldn't help but mock her. After all, it was she who betrayed him in the first place, but now she could shamelessly ask for his help. In a fit of anger, he directly hung up the phone. Unexpectedly, at this moment, his enemies came knocking at his door. After Lucas had a hard time dealing with them, Katie's phone call came again. This time, she was friendlier and promised that as long as he caught Ghost, she could take charge of canceling the arrest warrant for Lucas so that he could return to a normal life. This condition was too attractive, so Lucas had no reason to refuse. However, at this moment, Ghost was about to leave Bangkok by plane, so Katie immediately ordered people to lift the no-fly order for Lucas. Then, she asked him to immediately go to the airport, board the same flight as Ghost, and bring him back to justice. But they didn't know that someone had leaked the news about Ghost and posted an assassination bounty of tens of millions of dollars on the dark web, causing countless assassins to eagerly try to take action. Soon after, Lucas smoothly arrived at Bangkok Airport, and a support staff member gave him a passport and boarding pass. However, he still couldn't completely trust Katie. Just as Lucas was about to board the plane, his phone rang again. It turned out that the CIA technical staff, through analyzing photos of the scene, discovered a trail of blood stains remaining on the road not far from the explosion site. Clearly, Ghost had been shot before retreating. After learning about the latest clue, Lucas just frowned slightly and then handed his passport to the security officer. Unexpectedly, when the security officer scanned it twice, the screen displayed the word invalid both times, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. At this time, a staff member standing next to him came over and slapped the scanner hard, and then a green information box appeared on the screen. In this way, Lucas very smoothly passed through security and successfully boarded the flight to San Francisco in the United States. However, at this moment, he didn't have any information about Ghost's characteristics. He didn't even know if the person was male or female, and he could only observe the surrounding passengers without revealing his presence. This flight was expected to last 16 hours. Could Lucas successfully find the target and successfully arrest him safely and secretly within this time? At the same time, the CIA also obtained the latest intelligence. The Bangkok team discovered that Ghost had entered a veterinary clinic in Bangkok after being injured. Clearly, he had been treated there. So they decided to continue following the trail to find more clues about the target. And Lucas here was helped by the flight attendant to find his seat. However, the unusual actions of a male passenger made him suspicious and attentive. Seeing this, the other person hurriedly explained that he was just a little afraid of flying. Hearing this, Lucas breathed a slight sigh of relief, then quickly took a glass of strong alcohol from the flight attendant's hand. When the plane successfully took off, the heart that was hanging in the air was completely relieved, but unexpectedly, an even greater danger was waiting for him. Not long after the plane took off, the man sitting next to him suddenly started a conversation, talking about everything from new life to his current success, and advising Lucas to stay optimistic, saying that as long as there is hope, you will definitely succeed in the end. This bunch of empty theories made Lucas feel extremely uncomfortable. Finally, he could only use the excuse of going to the bathroom to escape the man's clinginess. While in the bathroom, he subtly peeked through the curtains, looking around the passengers in the other seats, trying to find a target, but ultimately didn't gain anything. When he returned to his seat, he found a man sitting next to him chatting lively with the flight attendant, even asking her for 2 glasses of strong alcohol. Although the amount wasn't much, it was enough to relieve Lucas's craving for alcohol, and the enthusiasm of the man sitting next to him made him completely lose his guard. Unexpectedly, as soon as he drank his glass, he realized something was wrong with his body. He hurriedly staggered to his feet, trying to call for help, which would lead to the opening scene. Lucas, affected by the drugs, was no match for the man, but the man intended to play around, preparing to slowly torture him to death. But this also gave Lucas a chance to counterattack. He put all his strength into hugging the man, and the man's head was pierced through the fire sprinkler on the ceiling, making him unable to move. Confirming that the man was dead, Lucas first informed Katie of the situation, then used all his strength to crawl into the bathroom, turn on the shower, and wash the blood off his body. Then, he drank hand sanitizer to quickly get the drugs out of his stomach. Once he gradually regained his senses, he quickly hid the body in the ventilation duct. But just then, 2 flight attendants suddenly knocked on the bathroom door, asking if Calot needed medical assistance. It turned out that the loud noise earlier had aroused the suspicion of the staff. Seeing that Lucas still refused to open the door, the air marshal on the plane could only personally step in and forcefully order the person inside to open the door. Hearing the increasingly loud banging on the door, Lucas could only quickly open the door and say that he was a little airsick. As soon as he finished speaking, the male flight attendant noticed a small drop of blood falling from the ceiling. Lucas then quickly knocked the air marshal unconscious and dragged the 2 flight attendants into the bathroom. Seeing the arm hanging down from the ventilation duct, the flight attendants were immediately so frightened that they couldn't speak, warning in trembling voices that there was another air marshal on the plane. However, Lucas didn't want to make things difficult for them. He just recounted his identity and current situation in detail, asking the 2 of them to help him find the passenger list, and informed the captain to remain vigilant. Seeing that Lucas really had no intention of killing them, the 2 flight attendants immediately expressed their willingness to help and even found him a clean set of clothes. Then, he left the bathroom, wrapped the gun in a towel, and handed it to the female flight attendant, Isha, hoping she could help dispose of it. Seeing this, she could only hug it in fear and leave. After arranging everything, Lucas took the passenger list and entered the passenger cabin with a serious expression, meticulously searching for the target. But ultimately, he gained nothing. But when he returned to the galley, the male flight attendant, Paul, ran over in a panic, saying that he found a badge and walkie-talkie of another air marshal in the trash. Hearing this, Lucas's expression immediately changed. Then, sure enough, they discovered a large pool of blood in the transport container in the galley. At this moment, Isha also hurriedly ran over. After learning that the cargo container was connected to the cargo hold, Lucas immediately decided to go with Isha to check it out. The result was as expected. The air marshal's body was indeed in the cargo hold. Isha was so frightened by the scene that her face turned pale, and she couldn't help but ask Lucas who he was looking for. Unexpectedly, he asked in return, "Are you feeling hot?" "Why?" "That's a cold sweat." Seeing Isha's puzzled expression, Lucas flatly stated that he admired her disguise skills and then lifted up her shirt. These words were really too rude, and Isha immediately turned red with anger. But Lucas didn't care at all. He urgently wanted to confirm whether the girl had a wound on her stomach. Who would have thought that ghost wasn't some middle-aged man, but a 16-year-old girl? After being exposed, Isha instinctively wanted to leave, but unexpectedly, the two people's conversation was overheard by an assassin hiding in the shadows. This fierce tug-of-war caused Isha's stomach wound to tear open, further confirming Lucas's judgment. Seeing that her identity had been revealed, Isha didn't hide anything anymore. Under Lucas's threat, she agreed to cooperate and find a way to get through this long flight. After all, now only he wanted her to survive. As for other matters, they would wait until after landing safely. To solve the immediate threat, the two went to the cockpit to inform the two pilots of the current situation, instructing them to keep the cockpit door locked until the plane landed. Then Lucas and Isha returned to the galley. In order to prevent the other assassins from noticing anything unusual, Isha decided to continue pretending to be a flight attendant, while Lucas went to the first-class cabin to see if there were any suspicious people. However, as soon as he entered the passenger cabin, he was looked down upon by an arrogant flight attendant. Helplessly, Lucas could only ask to see the cargo list. But at this moment, a woman in a vest suddenly attacked him. Seeing this, Lucas fought back. At first, he thought the assassin had mistaken him for Ghost, and only defended passively, without using all his strength. Only when he saw the tattoo representing the Triad Assassin organization on the other person's body did he realize the seriousness of the situation. Lucas's nerves immediately tensed, and his movements became more serious. After a fierce battle, the female assassin completely lost her ability to fight. Thinking that he could finally breathe a sigh of relief, he didn't expect the other person to have accomplices. Knowing that the situation was out of control, he grabbed an empty bottle of wine and rushed toward a horde of fierce-looking assassins. Thanks to his superior agility, Lucas weaved freely through the crowd and quickly took care of all the assassins who were chasing him. But in the next second, the assassin's cell phone that had fallen to the ground suddenly lit up. Seeing a picture of himself on the phone, it turned out that he was also one of the bounty targets. He tried to suppress his anger and questioned Isha about what kind of mess she had caused that made him suffer the consequences. Isha knew she was in the wrong and could only sheepishly tell the truth. It turned out that she had not only caused trouble with the CIA, but also bombed and destroyed an electronics factory of the Triad Society, which was why she had attracted this deadly disaster. However, she did this for a reason, because the electronics factory was doing illegal transactions. Hearing this, Lucas could only accept his bad luck. Not long after, Katie learned about the situation on the plane, but at this point, she was also powerless and could only silently pray that everything would go smoothly. Hunter, standing next to her, was burning with anxiety and couldn't help but doubt Lucas's abilities. So he wanted to report the matter to his superiors and ask for assistance, but Katie stopped him because she believed that Lucas could complete the mission successfully. On the other side, the situation on the plane was also becoming increasingly dangerous. The assassins in the passenger cabin simultaneously received Lucas's photo and the reward money, and some had already stood up to search for his figure. Seeing this scene, alarm bells rang loudly in Lucas's head. Continuing to hide wasn't a long-term solution. So in the next second, the lights in the passenger cabin suddenly turned on. The assassins who were ready to move hurriedly returned to their seats, and a fierce shootout took place in the small passenger cabin. Passengers screamed and ran in all directions, afraid that if they were a step too slow, they would suffer the consequences. And at this moment, facing the assassin organization's numerical superiority, Lucas gradually began to feel exhausted. Fortunately, Isha arrived in time, helping to defuse a wave of danger. But Lucas wasn't grateful because he understood very well that once the assassins learned that Isha was Ghost, their situation would become even more dangerous. But both of them were unaware that this dialogue had been overheard by a man hiding behind a curtain. Taking advantage of the fact that Lucas and the assassin were engaged in battle again, the man quietly approached Isha and successfully subdued her. Seeing this, Lucas's heart burned with anxiety and wanted to stop him, but he was ambushed by an assassin from behind. Fortunately, he was skilled in martial arts and instantly counterattacked the opponent. But assassins kept attacking wave after wave. Just as Lucas was busy defending, Isha and the assassin who was kidnapping her were also fighting fiercely. She wasn't the kind of weak woman who couldn't take care of herself. She directly grabbed the water bottle next to her and slammed it hard on the face of the assassin in front of her. Then, she landed a flurry of punches and kicks, leaving the assassin unable to resist. Finally, she seized the opportunity and used all her strength to grab a gold suitcase and slam it hard on the assassin's head, very successfully rescuing herself. On the other side, Lucas also completed the final massacre. He hugged his injured stomach and prepared to rendezvous with Isha, but at this moment, a dart suddenly pierced his thigh. Then, 3 strangely dressed women rushed over and, without saying a word, pinned Lucas to the ground. Seeing this, Isha loudly tried to stop them. It turned out that these 3 people were her backup plan. Seeing that the situation was temporarily safe, Lucas, who had lost too much blood, finally collapsed in peace. Seeing that he was seriously injured, the 4 didn't dare delay and quickly helped Lucas into the luggage compartment to treat the knife wound on his stomach. Seeing Lucas get hurt to protect her, Isha hesitated for a moment and finally told him everything. It turned out that she had been an orphan since she was a child. Because she was more talented than others, she was trained by the Thai military to be a hacker. In the 10 years that followed, she used the skills she learned to help them do many illegal and criminal things, but these unlimited actions gradually made Isha unable to bear it, and her conscience gnawed it day and night. So, she finally chose to betray the organization and take a mysterious box. Inside was a device with powerful capabilities that far exceeded imagination, capable of attacking the firewalls of many countries in 30 seconds. This was also what the assassins really wanted. At the same time, the CIA also learned the true identity of Ghost. Seeing Agent Hunter hastily leave, the smile on Katie's face gradually disappeared. Sure enough, not long after, Ghost's real information appeared on the dark web. It turned out that all of this was deliberately done by Hunter, his goal being to have Lucas and the assassins slaughter each other, and then use his official position to arrest Isha. That way, he could get the mysterious device and take credit for it, and he wouldn't even have to pay the tens of millions of dollars in reward money. This plan, which would kill 3 birds with 1 stone, was truly perfect. So when Katie saw through his conspiracy, Hunter wasn't at all panicked. Instead, he told her everything. What was even more unexpected was that after learning the truth, Katie didn't stop him, but chose to join forces with him to complete this capture mission at the lowest possible cost. On the other side, there was suddenly a loud crashing noise from the door above. It turned out that the assassins had found their way here, and Paul called to remind Isha that those assassins had her picture and that she had to find a way to escape. Knowing that the baggage compartment partition couldn't withstand strong impacts, Lucas finally decided to take the initiative and show his face. So everyone quickly searched through the luggage, hoping to find some useful weapons. Next, Lucas drank a vial of adrenaline that the veterinarian had stolen when Isha was injured, trying to reactivate his body functions. However, it quickly became clear to the others that his condition was very unstable. Box of killing. If we do it right, every son of a bitch in front of us is dying. Isha and the others were speechless seeing this. Just as they were about to continue planning, Lucas became even more excited, excitedly saying that he alone could capture all the assassins. At this point, everyone finally realized the seriousness of the situation. It wasn't until they tore off the label of that liquid vial that they discovered it was actually a vial of toad venom, which was much stronger than adrenaline. Not long after, Lien led her subordinates back into the passenger cabin, launching a fierce attack on the assassins as soon as they entered. Under suppressive fire of the 3 women, those assassins didn't gain any advantage. Then Lucas also followed the latter back into the plane. Under the influence of the toad venom, the scene before him was brilliantly dazzling. Time seemed to freeze, and he couldn't immediately react until a beautiful female assassin stood in front of him. Lucas then reacted, landing a punch that pierced through her skull. But at this point in his eyes, the blood that spurted out was all brilliant fireworks. Next, he displayed his divine power, taking on the entire group by himself. Don't think that there were only 4 of them in total. Each of them had extraordinary fighting power. Even when facing the rushing crowd, they weren't at a disadvantage. At the same time, the underworld organization, which had originally planned to sit back and reap the benefits, saw the situation on the plane becoming increasingly chaotic and finally couldn't hold back any longer. They quickly took out guns from their backpacks and then skillfully began to fire wildly. The scene immediately became extremely chaotic, and at the same time, an unexpected disaster struck. A stray bullet accidentally hit the interior window, followed by the sound of shattering glass. The enormous air pressure instantly sucked an assassin out. Immediately afterward, the oxygen inside the plane was rapidly lost. Everyone hurriedly grabbed onto their seats to avoid being sucked out. Lucas and Lien also took this opportunity to push the gangsters holding guns out of the plane. Fortunately, in the critical moment, the two pilots in the cockpit calmly and promptly reduced the plane's altitude and speed, gradually causing it to return to a stable state. However, the co-pilot, still in shock, forgot Lucas's instructions and, despite the captain's attempt to stop him, opened the cockpit door. In the next second, two assassins rushed in and seized control of the plane. To make matters worse, Lucas's wound tore open again. Facing the surrounding assassins, he was starting to feel exhausted, but at this moment, Isha suddenly stepped forward and threw Lucas a chainsaw with extremely strong killing power. With a weapon that was easy to handle, his fighting power immediately exploded. The ear-splitting sound of the chainsaw echoed throughout the plane, and fresh blood stained the floor and walls red. This was truly a merciless massacre. But just as he was killing with abandon, a gangster who had been unconscious woke up and staggered towards Isha, who was hiding. Then, another assassin followed behind. Fortunately, Lucas discovered them in time and easily sent both of them on their way with the chainsaw. After solving all the assassins as easily as cutting bamboo in half, everything finally ended. But at this point, the captain had been killed by the assassins, leaving only Lucas and Isha. How could they land the plane safely? On the other side, Katie and Hunter were also anxiously waiting at the landing site. Seeing the plane gradually approaching on the screen, Hunter couldn't hide the excitement and joy in his heart. But in the next second, the plane disappeared from the radar screen. Before he could even understand what was happening, he was shot in the head by Katie from behind. It turned out that all of this was within her calculations. Next, Lucas's phone rang again. Learning that Katie was also targeting the mysterious box, he immediately went back on his word and refused to hand Isha over to the CIA. Then, without listening to Katie's crafty justifications, he hung up the phone directly. Since he had completely turned against Katie, the plane couldn't land in San Francisco as planned. However, Isha had already thought of this step. After all, as a top hacker with a powerful, mysterious device in hand, how could she not be able to control an airplane? Hearing these words, Lucas finally collapsed in peace. When he woke up again, the plane had already landed safely. But before he could even understand the current situation, a grenade unexpectedly shattered the wall of the room. Wonderful, you're still alive. Good news, we can keep playing. And with that, the movie ends. This film, set on a plane from Bangkok to San Francisco, tells the story of disgraced agent Lucas being urgently recalled on the flight to arrest a mysterious hacker ghost. Unexpectedly, as the story develops, a battle for survival secretly unfolds at an altitude of thousands of meters. The action scenes in the film are thrilling and stimulating, inheriting the fiery style of the John Wick series. Close combat scenes and shocking visuals constantly appear. Especially the gunfights in the confined space of the plane, the use of handheld camera angles further enhances the sense of realism and tension. However, the story setup is somewhat monotonous, but director James Madigan used the arrangement of space and clever use of visual language to make the entire story seamless and coherent. Especially the lead actor, Josh Hartnett, successfully uses exquisite acting skills to create the image of an agent who is both brave and resourceful. The strong charisma shown in the action scenes makes a lasting impression on the audience. At the same time, in addition to the thrilling and stimulating action scenes, the film also tries to add emotional elements. The trust that Lucas establishes with the other passengers during the mission adds a touch of warmth to the film. Although this emotional portrayal isn't prominent, it adds more layers of emotion to the film, preventing it from becoming a purely superficial action movie. Those of you who are interested can watch the original movie, Fight or Flight. The value of a movie lies in its reputation, while the value of a movie review lies in the feeling. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching the movie.